Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to Tempest Remastered Week. This week we're going to take a really close look at the Tempest Remastered release, which is a Magic the Gathering online only release. And I won't go into all the gory details now since I want to jump into the set review, but at the end of February we did a couple videos with more detail. We did one video that talked about all the details of the set and what you can expect from it and release dates and all that. And in the second video we talked about some speculation over what the mythic rares would be. So this week what we're going to do is just focus on doing the set review. We're going to do our 5 colors and then all the rest of the cards as we normally do with set reviews. And then on the last day, the 7th day, we're going to go ahead and compare our mythic rare speculation to what actually happened and see how close we were, which should be kind of fun to see how off we truly were or how right on we were. I haven't honestly looked at it yet. So here we go with the first card in the white set review, and it's Angelic Blessing. So you're paying 3 for this, but I'm going to tell you something. In the old days of Magic, back when us old folks used to play Tempest block, getting +3/+3 and flying till end of turn was huge. Creatures were usually very small. Evasion wasn't something that was around super frequently, especially at like the common or even uncommon levels at times with certain sets. So this card doesn't seem awesome. You kind of look at this and say, well, maybe this would be better if it was an instant. It could be a combat trick. Yeah, true, but in those days, this is going to be a good card. So in this world of Tempest, you're going to play this in limited, and you're going to be very, very happy with it. Sure, the downside is simply you can only use it once. It's a one and done sorcery, and you can't really surprise your opponent with it. But you might not need to. Getting evasion and +3/+3 is a big swing in this type of world with creatures. Our next one is Angelic Protector, and paying 4 for a 2/2 flyer nowadays, we would probably say, wow, that's not a very good card. But again, in this world, you're getting a 2/2 flyer. You're going to pay whatever it costs to get that 2/2 flyer. She also has the extra perk that she can be a really good blocker with some combat tricks, will really pump her toughness, or she's very difficult to be taken out with direct damage since she gets the +0/+3 when she's targeted. Next card is Anoint, and this is the first buyback card. Buyback, do not underestimate this. This is the real deal. This can really be an annoying thing to deal with because your opponent can just keep playing the buyback cards over and over and over again as long as they have the mana to do so. So it's tough to deal with for sure, but I will say this is not the most exciting buyback effect. I mean, it can be annoying, but there's better ones out there, and a lot of times this card probably won't make your final cut in limited. Armor Sliver. So slivers, and you'll see as we go through here, there's a number of them, but they're not super populated. They didn't put every single sliver from the block in here. So is there a sliver deck? Yeah, sure, there's some sliver decks, but probably in most cases you're going to be playing a sliver, maybe sub-theme, where you maybe have a couple good slivers that you're just kind of putting in your deck because they're decent creatures. So he's a sliver. If you're playing any slivers, you're going to play this guy. And he's a 2/2, so he's a fine guy. He costs 3, and you can pump his defense. Just better cards out there, and you don't have any other slivers. He might not make the cut in your deck. He's not the best sliver by any means, but you'll be happy to have him when you have other slivers in your deck. Next is Armored Pegasus, and this is 2 for a 1/2 flyer. It has evasion, which again is a little more meaningful in this block than it is in Contemporary Magic. So he's an okay 2-drop, but still he's not always going to make the cut because he will get relatively quickly outclassed. Avenging Angel, so now you're paying 5 for a 3/3 flyer. She does have the benefit that you have the opportunity to put her on top of the owner's library when she dies, so that's not a bad thing at all. So overall, in this limited world, this is a really nice card. A 3/3 flyer that is hard to get rid of couldn't possibly win you the game in this type of environment. So really good limited card. Bandage, and this cycles. It's hard to find good things to say about this card. Now, it's a combat trick, and it can save your creature, and in the right situation, you can basically kill a creature with it, save your creature, and draw a card. It's not horrible, but let's be honest with ourselves. How often is this really going to make the cut? I mean, if we're really desperate for a 22nd, 23rd card in our limited deck, then maybe it makes it, but there's just so many better combat tricks out there. The best thing this card does is draw you another card for 1 white. Cataclysm, and this is one of the first mythic rares that we're seeing from the set, and this is an interesting one. It's almost like their attempt to do Wrath of God and Armageddon together in one, you're able to, or really maybe a better analogy would be kind of a fixed balance. It's a really unique card. So it lets you and your opponent each keep an artifact, a creature, an enchantment, and a land. Everything else gets sacrificed. So the sacrifice wording does get around things like indestructible. Not that that really is in this environment, but just kind of an interesting thing to think about. This is a great control card, and the only downside to it is you are giving your opponent the choice, so they're going to be able to keep their best things. Now you're going to keep your best things, but there's going to be times where this card's going to be in your hand, and you're going to look at the board state and say, "Well, if I play this right now, that's bad for me," as opposed to, "Okay, I'm ahead and I want to stay ahead, so let me play Cataclysm." So sometimes it's going to feel like a dead card, but it's a very powerful card. Charging Paladin, and this is a decent creature for limited. You're 3 for a 2/2, but whenever he attacks, he gets that toughness buff that can help keep him alive. Decent guy. He doesn't have evasion, but he'll probably make your cut in most cases. Card is Conviction, and I'm usually not a big fan of auras, but this one has the escape clause. You can pay 1 white, return it to your hand, so that's a good thing. And also in this format with so much shadow, and especially shadow creatures in white, buffing your shadow creatures to be able to get more damage across can win you the game. So this is a much more powerful card in this environment and in this world than it probably is in most other Magic Limited formats that we've ever played. You can still get 2 for 1, so you do want to be careful, especially if you're in a situation where you're tapped out. Disenchant is classic artifact and enchantment removal. We've all played with it. Newer players know this better as Naturalize. Great card. The only downside is it probably will start out in your sideboard in most cases. Exalted Dragon. So here's a 5/5 flyer. Now we live in the world of Dragons of Tarkir, and we probably would thumb our nose at a 5/5 flyer for 6 that has a drawback. But in the world of Tempest and Exodus and Stronghold, guess what? This is probably one of the best creatures in the game. So you're going to play him. He's a 5/5 flyer for 6. Now, he can't attack unless you sack a land, so he is a very risky creature. So you want to be really careful when you play him. This is going to be a late game play where you're hoping to end the game within a turn or two. You don't want to all of a sudden lose your resources and then lose this dragon and be behind. So just a very skill intensive card, but it is strong. Field of Souls. This one I don't like as much. It's obviously has more upside if you're playing a creature heavy deck, a lot of small creatures, you're getting 1/1s with evasion. That's not a bad thing in the right deck. And there's going to be some limited decks that will want this. However, the biggest issue I have with it is you pay 4 and you basically get no effect. So I'm paying 4 mana. That's probably all I'm playing for the turn in most cases, and I'm passing the turn having done absolutely nothing. And that just doesn't feel good. So not a real strong card, not a real strong limited card. But they're, use your judgment. Obviously, if you have a lot of small creatures, you might be able to find some value in it. Gallantry, and this is a really nice combat trick for white. Costs 2, buffs your creature +4/+4, but it's only a blocking creature, so it can only work on the defensive end, and you do get to cycle off it. So in most cases, it feels like a white Doomblade where you get to cycle. Now, that's a huge exaggeration, of course, because it is a little situational. You have to wait for your opponent to bash in. You have to have a creature to block that is going to be able to get pumped up big enough to destroy it, so on and so forth. But it is very good. You're going to use it. Gerard's Battle Cry, and this is a really strong card, and don't be fooled by the fact that it's a 1 enchantment, but this isn't the card you want to play in your first turn, your second turn, or your third turn. This is something you hold in your hand, and you wait to the end of the game where you can go in for the kill, and then you put this thing down, and you attack with all your little creatures or your shadow creatures that can't be blocked, and then you just pump them up with this ability. This is an awesome, awesome card, and now the name's escaping me, but Dragons of Tarkir had a card that was very similar to this just come out. So it's going to be interesting to see if that effect is as powerful today as it was back then. But this is no joke. This is a card that you're definitely going to play in your aggro decks, and even decks that aren't as heavy with creatures. It's still good. Humility, and this has been upgraded to the mythic rare level. And this is just kind of one of those spells that it's going to be okay in some decks. This is also a panic button if somebody's getting maybe a lot of big creatures and you're about to lose the game. Now it affects everyone equally, so there's going to be decks where you're not going to want to play this or not want to include it. So again, use your judgment when you're building your deck. If you think this is going to do more harm to you than good, then obviously leave it out. But it is a panic button and it's great in certain situations. Core Chant, I really like this, and this may be one of the best quote-unquote removal cards in the whole set. It costs 3, but it's an instant. All damage will be dealt this turn, the whole turn, to target creature you control by a source of your choice is dealt to another target creature instead. So you're bouncing the damage, so you're saving your creature and killing their creature with this card. Really good card. I can't even really think of a downside to this. 3 mana, I think, is even a fair casting cost for it. Master Decoy, very, very efficient tapper. This is the type of card we see today, but usually costs something like 4 to tap the creature or something like that. So this is a 2 for 1/2 and 1 to tap a target creature. And of course he taps himself. The only thing I would say is keep in mind to make sure that you use this before the combat steps. So when you get to the point where they're ending their first main phase and beginning combat, that's your last opportunity to use Master Decoy. If they go into their attack phase and you tap it, the creature is still attacking. So just want to be mindful of that interaction. Mounted Archers. So 2/3 reach, and you can pay additional mana so that it can block additional creatures. I like the card. It slows down the board a little bit. It's not a super big creature or anything. You're paying a lot for it. But if you're really truly blocking multiple creatures, it might save you for a turn, but then it's probably not going to live. So it's unique. If you need to buy some time and slow down the game, it's a fine card. It's probably not always going to make your cut, though. Nomads in Core, and there's a whole series of these, and we'll be looking at them, but these cards are deceptively powerful. When you have a lot of creatures on the board, and so let's say you have maybe 2 3/3s and a 2/2, you block with this thing, say you block a 3/3 creature, you do 1 damage to a 3/3, 1 damage to a 3/3, 1 damage to a 2/2, that creature doesn't get past you, and none of your creatures die. This is deceptively good, so you want to be really careful. The only, I guess, if there is a downside to these type of cards, is that they do make combat super confusing at times, so you do have to kind of, be on your game with the math, and that's why they would never make cards like this today. But these are powerful cards. This one is probably the worst of the bunch, though, because it is only a 1/1, and the trick with these cards, again, this is a 1-drop, but this doesn't necessarily feel like it wants to be your 1-drop. You probably will get more value out of this card if you play it after there's already other creatures on your side. Aurum Samite Healer, and I really like this card a lot. This, if anyone's ever played with this card in the past, you know that how annoying it is in combat. So you get it to protect your creatures or yourself for 3 damage by tapping her, and that's awesome in combat, and it really sometimes puts your opponent in a position where they just can't attack because there's going to be no profitable blocks for them when you pull the trigger on this thing. So the only downside is she's legendary, so you can't have multiple copies out at a time, but she's powerful enough. You say, shoot, who cares? Much like the last card, it's a math nightmare on the board, and it really can slow down combat and come up the game. So again, it's not a card they're ever going to make this type of thing again, but it's a fun card. It's definitely powerful. Pacifism. We just saw this in Dragons of Tarkir, and this has been reprinted multiple times. Classic cheap white removal, quote unquote. You do have to remember that it does not stop activated or triggered abilities, so that's that. But it only costs 2 mana, and you're going to basically take a creature pseudo off the board. Very good card. Paladin and Vec. 2/2 for Striker for 3 in this world? Yeah, sign me up. Give me protection from black and red. Yeah, this is going to be one of the best creatures in the game. So he's got protection from 2 of the big removal colors. I mean, white's the only other one that usually you have to kind of watch out for. Of course, blue can probably bounce and what have you. But really good card, just really powerful. And it's a color hoser, but this is good enough. It's just not a sideboard card. Like, even if I'm playing against other colors besides red and black, I'm still going to probably main deck this guy. Pegasus Stampede, and This card is another deceptively powerful card. You want to be real careful when this card starts coming out because this can be a win condition in the late game where you can just basically turn most of your lands into these 1/1 white flyers. And you have to be real careful. It's a very risky card to play. If your opponent has a board sweep or something after you play this, it's not going to feel good because it is a sorcery and not an instant. So you can't do it, say, at the end of their turn or something like that. You're going to have to truly do it on your turn and then untap with these Pegasuses. Pegasi. So it's a really strong card, but it's a gamble when you play it, and it's very skill intensive. Make sure you're playing this at the right time. You want to end the game with this. You don't want to play this in the middle of the game or at the beginning of the game by any means. Repentance and decent white removal for 3. Downside is it's not going to remove everything. So there's going to be times where this will be in your hand and you're going to be like, oh man, this creature's toughness is too high for its power and I can't do anything, but it's going to get rid of most creatures. Shaman Encore. So this is probably the most pushed of these Encore cards because not only can it redistribute damage, but you can pay 2 mana and it doesn't tap or anything. You do this as much as you need to do, as long as you have mana, to redirect damage from other creatures to it. So now you can not only, say, block with this creature and redistribute damage, but you can take damage from other creatures you're trying to protect, bring it to her, kind of like a bodyguard, or him. It's hard to tell. I think maybe it's a him. And treat it like a bodyguard, and either the creature dies or else you can redistribute that to other creatures and nothing dies. This is just an annoying card to get around of. It's going to make some crazy battlefield situations, but very, very powerful card. Again, much like the other Encore cards, you don't want to play this on turn 2. This is something you want to put out once you have enough creatures that it can be profitable for you. Smites. Smites are really good. Basically removal card. Now it's a little situational because it does have to be a blocked creature that you're destroying, but it only costs 1 white, and as long as you can block a creature, it's fantastic. So is it always going to be the most amazing thing in the world? Well, no. If you're getting beat down by a flyer and you don't have a flyer to block, Smite's not doing much for you, but in most cases it's worth running. Soltari Champion, and here's, I think, the first of our shadow creatures that we've looked at. And 2/2 shadow, so can only be blocked by other shadow creatures, but can also only block other shadow creatures. So that's the double-edged sword of this mechanic. It's kind of awesome because if your opponent isn't playing shadow creatures, they can't block you, but at the same time, you have to imagine in that case, well, you're not going to be able to block all your opponent's creatures if that's all you're playing as Shadow. This one is especially aggressive because it gives all your other creatures +1/+1 when it attacks. So he's attacking and in most cases really can't be stopped and then buffing all your guys. So this is a really, really good guy to have. Even if you don't have any other Shadow Soldiers, this is a good one to just put in any deck. Really strong. Soltari Lancer, and same story as the last one. This one's not quite as powerful as what we just saw, but still very, very powerful. He's good in a Shadow Mirror matchup because he has the first strike when he attacks, which is going to help him get in for more damage. But again, this whole Shadow mechanic is a very offensive mechanic and not very defensive, so you do have to be careful when you build around this. Soltari Monk, here we go with Shadow again. This time he's got protection from black, so it does protect him from some of the black removal. Other than that, all the other stuff is the same as the previous 2 cards. And then we got this one, Soltari Priest, and same thing we just saw, but instead protection from red. Again, another color that's good to have protection from in these situations with direct damage, and another great shadow creature. Soltari Trooper. This one was in Vintage Masters, and it was just a powerhouse, which is funny to think. Vintage Masters had some of the most broken cards in the history of Magic. Had the Power 9. The list just went on and on and on and on. And this thing is probably one of the cards you were the most afraid to see come out on like turn 2 or turn 1. This card was just a beating, and it can just be a beating. It gets dropped down on like turn 2, turn 3, you're going in for 2 damage. There's no way for your opponent to block it unless they have a shadow creature. It's just really, really strong card. Like all shadow creatures, yeah, of course, you have to be careful from the crackback side of things, but it's just a good card. Spirit Encore, and this is one of our Encores now that are actually flying. So That's a little extra evasion. You're only paying 4 for a 2/2 flyer. In this world, that's pretty premium. And the fact that you can protect it by redistributing its damage is very good too. Again, not as good if this is the only creature on your side of the board, but if you have multiple other creatures, especially with some decent toughness, this guy's pretty good. Spirit Mirror, and this is a unique one. You're paying 4, and basically what it's doing is on your upkeep, you're getting a 2/2 white reflection creature as long as you don't already have one. So it's giving you kind of a perpetual blocker every turn. The only thing I really don't like about this card is it's one of those enchantments. Again, I'm paying 4 and I'm getting no immediate value. On my upkeep, I get a 2/2 creature, but it's just very expensive and slow for what it's trying to do in most cases. Standing troops and good blocker. This guy can slow down the game. He's got vigilance, so you can sometimes get in for a few points of damage with him. He won't always make your cut, though. He's just a little too defensive. If your deck's looking for a defensive, if you're playing control strategy, he's a good guy, but he's not probably your aggressive strategy creature. Staunch Defenders. Paying 5 for a 3/4 is really good in this world, in this environment. So you'll do it. You'll be happy to do it, and you get 4 life on top of it. The only downside of this guy is he doesn't have evasion. You can just kind of feel like if I'm paying 5, you feel like he should have some sort of evasion. He doesn't, though. That's just how creatures were back then. They just weren't as pushed. So, but he's not a bad limited guy. Wall of Essence, again, here's another control-y card. It's going to slow down the game. It's going to muck up the battlefield so that your opponent's not going to want to attack you. Very good. It's an all-defensive card, obviously. That's the only downside to it. You're not going to get a lot of offense out of it, but in the right deck, this is incredibly powerful. Warrior Encore. So here's our next Warrior and core card that's a 2/2 this time, and you can redistribute the damage. So you're paying 2 for a 2/2 as opposed to the 1 for the 1/1, and that's actually a big difference in this world because now you can still absorb 1 point of damage without redirecting it. So that's actually a bigger deal than it sounds. This guy, just like the others, very tough to deal with. Winds of Wrath, and this is another board sweeper. It can backfire on you, though. If your opponent just happens to have the random aura, you're going to be kicking yourself. But this is a panic button. If you need a panic button in your deck and or you're playing control, you're still going to use this regardless. And our last card for the white set review, Youthful Knight, and he's a 2/1 first striker for 2. That's very powerful. And back in the day when Tempest came out and this guy came out, he was pretty push. Like you were like, wow, 2/1 first strike for 2. This is an amazing card. I remember playing with multiple copies of this in white weenie decks and just feeling real good about myself. So this is going to be an awesome card. It's at the common level, so you'll see a lot of copies of it in limited. It's going to be an awesome limited card. So very good. Not only has 1 toughness, so it's a little fragile, but the first strike will kind of help you through a little bit. Well, that is our white set review for Tempest Remastered. Let me know how you feel about the set in the comments below. I don't know how many of the regular viewers play Magic Online as opposed to paper Magic, so let me know. Do you play Magic Online? Are you planning on playing Tempest Remastered? Did you enjoy things like this before, like Vintage Masters, for example, which was the last Magic Online only limited environment that they made, which was a little expensive, but this seems like it's going to be a lot of fun. So let me know in the comments. Hey, thanks for watching, and this is a good time to subscribe. We will be doing the rest of the set review, obviously, as well as some more videos about Tempest Remastered, and then we'll go on to kind of our regular stuff again after this week. So have a great day.